Well, good morning. Almost, it is almost afternoon. I just got to tell you, sometimes I think this and I don't say it, but I'm just going to go on and say it because I just want to show my appreciation for our worship team and bringing it every Sunday to lead us in worship. I can remember back when I was leading worship like 20 years ago, and every song felt like a new song. It was always a bit awkward. I love that when we bring these brand new songs, it's just it's a beautiful form of worship. So thank you to everybody. I want to also give a shout out because some of you here are normally at the second service, and you switched, and I just want to thank you because you helped us a little bit take some of the crush off of the second service. We're making it a little bit more crowded at the 11. That's good. We're just trying to, what we're trying to do? We're trying to keep some empty seats at all of these services, so when a guest comes, we've got a place for them, we've got a place for their car. So if you intentionally said, hey, we're going to try out the 11:15 with our kids, thank you so much. If you're just here because it was raining and you couldn't get out of bed for the second service, thank you. Take credit for it anyway, and just make it a habit, okay? So there's my little speech. So I got to tell you, I am loving doing this series. I am still equal parts excited and terrified. And today's topic terrifies me because it's a touchy subject. We've talked about guides. We've talked about the parental role as a guide for our children and what it is we can and can't do. Then last week, very important message. If you did not get a chance, if you weren't here last week, and I hope you'll go online and catch it, we talked about priorities. We talked about how it is that we decide as a family what is important enough to do. We talked about the danger of raising our kids by giving them the perfect set of experiences of sports and schools and vacations and possessions and all of that, and how that we can balance that with key relationships. And we talked about the three key relationships. We talked about the relationship with their parents, the relationship with God, and the relationship with other people. We've been talking about parents all along. We're going to continue to do that. Next Sunday, we're specifically going to talk about what it takes to give our kids their own deep, authentic relationship with God. Today, I want to talk about the touchy subject of our children's friends. I want to talk about friends and influences. I want to talk about other people, how they impact their lives, and what it is that we can and can't do about it. We all know that friends have an enormous influence on our children's lives. We're aware of this. It scares us to death. And then we wonder, what can I actually do about it? I'm just here to say that hoping for the best and complaining is not a good strategy, right? If you're out there going, I just hope my kid and his friends act better when they're not around me than when they are around me, that's not going to happen. So hoping for the best and complaining about what's happening is not a good strategy. Let me tell you what else is not a good strategy. And I hear this all too often. Letting them decide. Well, I don't want to make my kids. If I had a nickel for every time a parent said, I don't want to make my kids go to church. Was that a mocking tone? I'm sorry. Sarcasm is a spiritual gift. I'm going to dial that down. I'm just saying, there's a part of us that wants to go, well, I'm going to let them decide about friends and influences in their life. I'm going to let them decide because I don't want to be, when it comes to friends and influences, I don't want to be judgmental. Now listen, nobody likes to be called judgmental, but I'm telling you, if you're a mom or a dad, it is your job to be the judge. Somebody has to be there to guide our children. But I understand this is an enormously touchy subject. And so what I want to do this morning is I want to try and answer together two questions. So if you're writing notes down, these are going to be the two questions that we tackle. I want to talk about why friends matter. Why it is that the friends and influences in their life, why they matter. And then second, I want to talk about, very practically, how do we guide their friendships? I mean, how do we guide them out of one and into another, practically speaking? Can we, should we, what can we do, what can't we do? How do we approach this as parents? But let's start with the first one. Let's start by talking about why other people's influence, not just mom and dad, not just God's influence, but why other people's influence matters and why it matters so much. We looked at a verse last week that I think every family ought to decide during this series to commit to memory. It's very short. Proverbs chapter 13 and verse 20. You ought to go home, print it out, put it on your refrigerator, on your bulletin board, or on your front door, or on your mirror in your bathroom, whatever it is that helps you to remember this verse. Here's what it says, very important. It says, walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools, and you know what happens. Get in trouble. I like that phrase, just as become. Who you walk with is going to determine a lot about who you become. We've talked an awful lot about parents. I just want to go on record saying, listen, mom, dad, you are still it. Nobody has a bigger influence in your children's lives than you. You are the biggest influence, hands down. But you are not the only influence. There are lots of other voices speaking into their lives, good voices and bad voices. You see, we know about the good, but we forget that there's a positive side. Let me show you what happens when it all goes south. In the book of 1 Kings, chapter 12, there is just a little quick story. Let me read to you a part of it, starting in verse 6. 1 Kings 12, verse 6. Then King Rehoboam, he's the new king, his dad is Solomon, right? I mean, wisest man that ever lived. It's pretty cool if your dad is like the wisest, smartest dude that ever walked the planet. But here's the deal. You can be the wisest guy going and drop the ball with your kids. And that's what happened because the wisdom did not translate a generation down. Here's what happened. Then King Rehoboam discussed. He's now become the king. His dad has passed off the scene. Discussed the matter with the older men. He had a decision to make. There was some dissension out in the kingdom. He had to decide how he was going to approach it. So he discussed the matter with the older men who had counseled his father Solomon. What is your advice, he asked. How should I answer these people? Well, the older counselors replied, if you are willing to be a servant to these people today and give them a favorable answer. Listen, I know, but just a soft answer here, a soft moment. They will always be your loyal subjects. Listen, Rehoboam, you're the king. You get to call the shots, but here's the deal. You have an opportunity with a soft answer to gain the loyalty of the kingdom forever. That's what we suggest you do. Verse 8. But Rehoboam rejected the advice of the older men and instead, watch this, asked the opinion of the young men who had grown up with him and were now his advisors. He brought his posse along with him. Right? Come on. What do you guys think? Verse 9, what is your advice, he asked them. How should I answer these people who want me to lighten the burdens imposed by my father? The young men replied, This is what you should tell those complainers who want a lighter burden. Tell them, my little finger is thicker than my Father's waist. Yes, my Father laid heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them even heavier. My Father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions. So we don't have time to read the rest of the story, but anybody want to guess how that turned out? I think we understand that when you walk with the wrong people, when you listen to the wrong voice, you sometimes get classic case. The people he had grown up with and grown to trust were now influencing the direction of his entire kingdom. We have an opportunity to steer what happens in our children's life. They are going to get advice from their peers and mentors. It is going to happen, whether or not we are engaged in the process. Let me give you 3 reasons I think this matters, because it turns out that this is a very positive opportunity for us to make a difference in our kids' lives. Here's 3 reasons it matters. First, we don't have all the answers. I'm talking about we, you, me, mom, dad. The ones who know the nuances, understand the children, know the situation, have more access to more information about what's going on, have to be in a place where we can admit, I'm limited. I don't have all the answers, and I don't always get it right. I was taking Brianna, our second oldest. We were on our way to the Registry of Motor Vehicles in Yarmouth, which is like, 3-4 hours away. And she was going to take her driver's permit test. And so I'm doing what a dad does. I'm driving her, and I'm giving her instructions, because now the time has come. And I'm like, oh, okay, so when you come to a light, you want to do this, and you'll be looking over here, and you want to be defensive, and you got to watch out for crazy people. And, and I'm like doing all this, and we're driving down 28, and we're on our way to the other side of the world, and we're like driving, and all of a sudden I look at my rearview mirror and I see blue police lights. When you first think that, you're thinking they must be after someone else, right? It's really, for me, I'm like, dear Lord, don't let that be for me, right? Because that would be really embarrassing. And so I'm waiting for him I'm like doing that slight pullover thing so he can pull around, and I want to show enough respect, but at the same time not guilt by the way you're driving. And then he just pulled in right behind me to pull me over. And as soon as he did, I knew what it was for. Confession is good for the soul. So I had a expired inspection sticker. It had been expired for a while. I'm not going to tell you how long. But I knew. In fact, yeah. So he comes over to the window, and I think the best, if we have any officers in our and the service today, I just want to go on record. I think the best plan of attack when they come, the best strategy is to confess everything. So I did. I'm like, when I was 5, I did this, and I locked my sister in the basement, and I'm sorry. And I know my sticker, he says, they ask that, I know my sticker is out of date. In fact, I got to tell you, because I knew he was going to find out, I got to tell you, I already got a warning for it. And he said, I know. I gave it to you. You're not listening to this, right, Brianna? You just be quiet. She's smirking over there. You know how 16-year-old, I'm like, you just be quiet over there right now. Not happening. Just give me that ticket and let me get out of here. At that point, whatever he would have gave just to get out would have been fine. You know what the truth is? We don't have it all figured out. We don't have it all right. We make mistakes, and we need other voices in our lives. We need for them to have good and godly voices. We need for them to have mentors and teachers and youth leaders and children's teachers and Sunday school teachers and youth pastors. We need all of these voices in their lives. We need them to have mentors, but we need them to have peers, good friends that step in and speak what's right. That really leads us to the second point. It's this, that they need other voices with the same message. See, this is what our kids need. They need some other voices in their life other than mom and dad who are giving them the same message. I'm not talking, preaching like mom and dad. That's not what I'm talking about. They need other voices that have been lifted up, valued, honored, admired by them, that are giving them the same message that mom and dad are giving them at home. Our older kids are both involved in the youth group. Our third daughter will be in next year, and it's been a huge blessing for them. I'm the pastor, but I'm a parent too, and I love for my kids. I mean, they come and they drink enormous amounts of Mountain Dew, whatever they happen to be doing that particularly. But at the same time, they're learning things. You know what happens every once in a while? My daughters will be driving home. They'll be like, Dad, Josh was preaching on this, and it really made sense. And I'm like, hello, I've been preaching that. Actually, I don't say nothing. I'm like, really? That is profound right there. Right? I mean, man, they need some other voices that are giving them the same message in their life. Because it might be that other voice that multiplies the effect of what you say is the one that helps push them over the edge to where God has planned for them. Here's something else, just as a third principle, and I think it's just a practical point that helps us to understand why. Because there's a part of us that goes, well, they should be able to tell me anything. If I'm really doing my job as a parent, I want to be there for everything. Really? You're the only one? Here's why this doesn't work. And if you're writing things down, write this third one down. They need someone who is not an immediate authority. You see, you are, as a mom and a dad, you are the rule maker and the rule enforcer. This means that at some points in time, you are inherently unsafe. No, I want them to be able to... Listen, I want my kids to be able to tell them, but the truth of the matter is, my kids want to please me. I hope. I hope that they want... And so, when they're afraid or they're struggling with something, listen, if they're in a place where, God forbid, they can't, I want them to have another safe voice that gives them the same message that they can go to. How great is it if your kid has a friend, their same age, who tells them the same thing you say? How much would you pay for that? I would be checking 20s out of my wallet like this. Thank you very much. Right? That becomes a safe place to work through those things when maybe in that moment mom and dad were just, it was too close. But so far all we've really talked about is why it matters. I think it's good for us. We know why the negative matters, but we ought to recognize why the positive is important too, and the potential when they have good peers and good mentors in their life who can make a difference. But what can I do? I think the practical question that we're going to wrestle with, if the first question is why it matters, then the second question has to be, what can I do? What can I do to guide them in their relationship with other people? What is the role of a mom or a dad in helping to influence? And I'm going to talk specifically here, because I like to get myself in trouble. I'm going to talk specifically about peers, about friends for a moment. We have a better sense of how to steer them towards mentors. But what about friends and peers their own age? Proverbs 13:20, back to this verse which is so important. Here's what it says. Walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools, or in other words, walk with fools and get in trouble. We kind of know this. There is a simple but profound wisdom here that we shouldn't miss. When you walk with someone, you're going to become like them. You know what we really want? We want to help our kids walk away from the wrong people and the wrong places. And we want to help them at the same time walk towards the right people and the right places. I mean, really, the wisdom of this verse, Mom, Dad, how do we steer our kids away from the wrong places and toward the right places? This is where it becomes touchy. You know, nothing is painful until it's specific. So let's take a moment and talk about how it is that we can help our kids walk away from wrong places. Let me offer just two pieces of direction or advice or wisdom on this. First is be aware. This is what I mean by that. We have to be aware when it comes to their friends and who their friends are. We have to be aware, first, of who they are, and second, of what they are like. I'm making an assumption here, by the way, that's an important assumption. You have to know who your child is and what they're like. You have to know where their strengths are, how strong they are, how susceptible they are, where they're weak, where they're struggling, because that's going to have everything to do with who they're safe around. But what I need to know is who are their friends, who are their influences, and what are they like. Now here's the danger in that. The danger is that you and I will stereotype. Oh, they got good friends. They live in such and such a neighborhood, nice house, mom and dad, got a good job. I'm going to tell you something. If you stereotype like that, you will suffer the consequences. If you think that socioeconomic standing has anything to do with character, you will be sadly disappointed. That's not to say that everybody that lives in a nice house or is the captain of the soccer team or whatever is a bad person. It's just that you can't stereotype. Well, my kids are with, they're playing sports and those are good kids and the kids come from a good home, and definition of good home, a nice home or nice neighborhood or no. Don't stereotype. Here's what we're talking about. We're talking about character, which is much harder to evaluate. We have to be able to step back, and this is why it's so important to know what our kid is like. Because, and please catch this. This is not about saying, those are bad kids, I don't want my kid with them. That's often not the case. Here's what is often the case. I know my child's weaknesses and struggles. And I know that my child with that child is dynamite. It's gonna blow up. I know my child struggles with dishonesty, let's say. And this kid has an issue with dishonesty too. When they get together, it's like a festival of lies. Now, the truth is, your child may be the bigger liar. Yeah, I mean, you may be like the pretty little liar. I don't know, whatever it is, right? A song or something like that. We should have played that this morning, right? You may, but you just know that that's not a safe environment. So let me take my best stab at what, let me just call it the Fell.5. This is just for us. Your assessment of the character that matters, you're going to have to wrestle with this. But if you're just writing things down, and this is how I would best look at it, the 5 things. If I'm looking and I say I want to know what they're like and I want to know what their character's like, I would be looking for this. First, I want to know about their family. That's really controversial. You're like, wait a minute. Not only are we going to judge kids, we're going to judge their parents too? Pretty much. Now you can skip this one if you want. But when you send your child into their home, their parents are authority figures that are teaching their children. I'm not saying they have to be perfect and, that they have to be, churchgoers. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. That's not what I'm saying. But if I find something that is out of whack and is influencing their child, I need to know that. I don't want that flowing over into my child's life, their family. And often what you see in the child's life is the direct result of what's happening at home. Second, this person, I look for honesty. Honesty is one of the first things we learn or unlearn as a child. It's our way of coping and getting out of trouble. And so I want to know, and sometimes kids struggle. And you put two kids that struggle with this together, I mean, I could tell some stories this morning about this, and I'm not going to do that, but man, yeah, you put two of them together, and I mean, it's wheels off. And I just want to know, is honesty, and listen, it's not saying, this kid told a little white lie. I'm not, this kid lied about where they were. I'm never letting them hang out. That's not what I'm saying. This is not like yes or no, black or white. I'm saying that I'm trying to decide how much influence this person is going to have. And as a part of that, I'm evaluating character over the whole. And this honesty is a part of it that matters. Here's a third. Respect. I want to see how that child shows respect to authority, specifically adults. I'm going to go a little old school on you. If I have a young child, let me define young. I had this the other day. I had a little boy, great kid, 12, 13. Hey, Ben, what's up? I'm just telling you this. If your child does that with you standing there, I will have a conversation right there and then. I'm not being unkind. Listen, and I pulled him over, and we had a great conversation. We were a high five. I'm like, all right, let's talk about this. It's just obviously it wasn't a part of where he wasn't grown up with it, or he was out there and he met a friend, and that was just the norm, and he didn't even think twice about it. I'm just saying that this has a lot to do. How they interact with adults and how they respect adults is an important thing for us to know and to be able to address. Fourth, we talked about this last week. We talked about this idea of that an experience-rich life but a relationally poor life leads to people who are self-centered. Okay. I'm watching for this. You know why? I want my children to be in relationships with people who are not self-centered. I don't want my kid simply to be a part of somebody else's posse. I would rather my children were in a less cool group where they interacted as peers with friends on a relational level, then they were allowed into a cooler group to be a hanger-on. I want them to develop relationships that are two-way relationships where they are blessing each other. And so I'm watching for that. You can already see you're like, how in the world do you... We're going to come to that. Let me give you the fifth one. And it will surprise you that it's last, but it's last on purpose. I want to know about their faith. But I'm going to come back to this before we finish. I'll be very honest. Some of my kids' best friends absolutely, completely do not share their faith. And I'm cool with that. In fact, I'm more than cool with it. I encourage it. So it's not like, they're not a Christian. They don't know how to find the New Testament. Get them out of our... No. That's not what I mean. But I want to know where they stand, because it's important for me that my kids have friends in both realms. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. You can see where this is not easy. You're like, how do you impose this very carefully? I'm just like, if you're sitting here going, that's it, we're going home, boom, those friends are out of there. I'm going to log onto their Facebook. I'm going to unfriend like 35 people when we get out of here. This is going to be great. No, don't. Put the brakes on. Don't do this, because it is very, very, very difficult. In fact, I wrote to I wrote to my daughter, my oldest, who has been out of the house now just 4 weeks off at college. And I thought I ought to get the perspective of somebody who's been on the receiving end of all this nonsense for all these years. And so I wrote, I said, Britt, I want to give you a chance to comment on your thoughts and experiences relative to these 6 topics we're going to be doing in this series. And she wrote me a lengthy enough thing and just said, Dad, here's my thoughts. And on this one, I thought what she said brought me in a direction I wasn't expecting, and so I wanted to read it to you. I thought that was probably the best way. Bear in mind, she's only been out from under Mom and Dad's roof, and she's still a little bit tethered because we're paying some bills. Lots of them. So I asked her, I said, Britt, would you your thoughts on the importance of friends and the need for parents, Mom and Dad, to filter the influences in your life? And my daughter, who's 18, this is what she wrote. She goes, Dad, this is something which I am not so far removed from as to have a good perspective on. You know what she's really saying? You don't want to know. And she said, ask me in 2 years or 10 years, and maybe I could. And then she said this, but maybe that is a reminder, too, that your kids are emotionally and situationally attached to the people around them, and that no matter how you treat the issue of bad friends, great friends, or just okay friends, we will not always have the same perspective, even if yours is clearer. I think she actually meant to say, even if yours is better. I'm going to talk to her about that later. I'm just parsing here, but... And then she says this shouldn't necessarily stop any action that is taken, but it should be a reminder that this is a sensitive and confusing thing for us. She actually went on to write about an experience that took place. And my daughter has a number of friends here, and the family's friends, and she wrote about an experience that had nothing to do with anybody here at the church. It was some friends that came from outside of the church. And she says, and I'm not going to read you this piece, but she said in the 9th grade, this is going back 4 or 5 years. And she says, and I remember this. And you know the thing is, I don't remember it. I mean, I knew the friends because they're still, to this day, as we were talking about, they're still some of her closest friends. But she remembered that from the 9th grade. What she didn't remember, and what I absolutely remember, is a conversation I had with her in the 2nd grade. In the 2nd grade, I'm dropping her off at elementary school at T-Ticket Elementary, and I just saw her kind of gravitating towards some friendships, and I saw what I could just see, just like the little signs of it, and I'm like, this is not good. And I remember sitting in the car and having a conversation about the importance of friends and the friends that we pick. And she doesn't even remember it, which I think is probably a helpful way for us to remind ourselves of this second point. If the first point is to be aware, then the second point is this: start young. Start young. Your ability to control your children's friends shrinks dramatically the older they get. In fact, if we had to put it in a goal, we would say this: when they're young, we use our authority. The older they get, we use our influence. I'm not done. I'm not done talking to her. I'm not just as they cross the threshold into, high school or junior high or college. It doesn't mean we're done. It's that the relationship is changing, and that it's I can no longer just drop rules from on high. It's no longer sufficient to say, no, I can't drive you there. You see, you say, well, how do you actually, when they're young, how do you do this? Because listen, when they're older, I'm going to be honest with you, and you have to be very careful with this, because you really have to know your child. But in some cases, we've sat and had conversations about it. We went back to those character things. And we said, this is why. But I'm not doing that with my 8-year-old. I'm not like, listen, he's not real honest, because the 8-year-old will go to school and say, my daddy said you're a liar and I can't hang out with you. Right? I mean, right? It's not, the message would not come through as clear as I want to, but the older they get, we're using our influence, and our influence means that we're sharing more and more with them of the story. You know what we're doing? We're dialing up certain relationships and we're dialing down other relationships. It's like your barbecue grill out back, right? The propane kind, not the briquette, the propane, right? You turn the propane on, and then you got the dials. You light that thing, you turn it up high, you get the grill nice and hot, and the flames are, it's like the sun, it's like coming up, it's hot, and you put your meat on there, but you know that you are dialing it up and down relative to what you want to happen. I'm just saying this is what we do with our children. There are some relationships we're like, man, that is a great relationship. I want to do everything I can to encourage my son or daughter. You can have 13 sleepovers in a row. If my wife is home and I'm away, I will drive you. I will do whatever necessary, right? Because I want to encourage these relationships. There are other times we're like turning the gas down because we're like, no. We want this one to get cold, right? You say, that sounds like manipulation. I call it strategy. You call it whatever you want. I'm just saying there are some I'm dialing up and there are others I'm dialing down. And here's the danger when we're not paying attention. Have you ever put some good hamburgers on the grill? I'm not talking about that 95% lean junk. I'm talking about like 85%. It's got enough fat in it. There's just some dripping off and the flames are like jumping up everywhere. You ever forget that on the grill and you come back and you open up the lid and there's an inferno. Everything is just blah, right? And it's just on fire. What do? You turn off the burners. Did you ever turn off the burners and it didn't do nothing? That fire had taken on a life of its own. The burgers are on fire, the grills are on, everything's on fire. And there's no gas going to it. You have lost control. Are you tracking with me? There are some times when we're just not paying attention, and man, that relationship, it's grown out of control. And that's why we have to start young. All right, I'm running out of time. Oh yeah, there's no other service to go. We can go right until... We can go to a kickoff at 1:05. We got 30 minutes. I'm kidding. You can catch the game on the way home. So here's the second principle. We talk about walking away, but if we're going to walk away from something, we have to walk into the right places. So let me give you 2 thoughts on walking into the right places. First is, and this is going to sound like I'm preaching to the choir, value your church community. Value your church. In fact, I'll go a step further. As community. Church is not about the experience. Let me get specific. Don't bring your kids into the auditorium, parents. That plain enough? I know sometimes we do it because it's like a great bonding experience. Don't do it. Let them be out there relationally where they're meeting other kids and they're finding out that there's somebody else out there that actually is learning the same story, and they're building those friendships and relationships and they're growing. And the kids' band is better anyway. These kids are rocking it out back there. It's great. Let them go in that environment. I'm saying that value the church not just as an experience. We go to church and it's this great feel-good experience. No, it's more than that. It's about relationships. I'll never forget, about 4 or 5 years ago, it might even be more than that, I can't remember exactly. We had a couple here in the church. They've since moved away. Husband and wife. The wife was a committed believer and the husband was a committed atheist. I know this because he told me. In the middle of a newcomers class, and his wife somehow convinced him to come, and then he proceeded to tell me about the latest book called The God Delusion and everything else, which I was familiar with. This was fine. We actually became somewhat friendly after that, once we kind of hashed through things a little bit. They were raising 2 teenage children who were not their own. They were foster children, and they had gotten them involved in youth group here, and they were involved in Thursday nights, and there's a lot of challenges that come along with that. I'll never forget one Thursday afternoon, knock on the church door, and it's the dad. And their oldest had run away. And we were the first place he came. Because he thought, my kid's got a relationship here. And he was just like, listen, if you hear anything, if you see anything. Well, it was Thursday. It's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And he had run away. And you know what he did on Thursday night? He came to Detour. It was perfect. Why? It's where his friends were at. It's where his youth pastor was at. It's where his youth leaders were at. And we were able to, Josh got with them and got with the parents. And I'm just saying that it's more than just the experience, and it's more than just the sum total of the lessons that are being taught on a Thursday night or on a Sunday morning. It's not just that. That's important, but it's the relationships that they're building one together. It's not just about Mountain Dew night and food fight night. It's about showing these kids that there's a group of people out there like them that share their faith and that are growing in it. Let me throw out another one. I'm just going to, Mom, Dad, this is going to sound bizarre, but some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of your kids have so fallen in love with what happens at Cape Cod Church on Thursday night or on Sunday morning that they look forward to it. And you have discovered that if you want to get your kid to comply, to punish them, you can threaten them with not going to church. Do you know how lucky you are? Now, having said that, let me beg you, do not threaten your kid with church. Never ground them from church. You say, never is a big word. Listen, it's very easy for them to turn that switch off and decide, well, I don't care, I don't want to go. And the tool that seemed to help you for 1 week or 2 weeks is now gone. Let this be a place where God is able to work in their life, where we are letting them walk into the right place. It may seem with all of this talk like I'm advocating that our kids live in a little bubble of a Christian community. Nothing could be further from the truth. Those of you who know me and are close to our family know that that's just not how we live. I firmly believe not just that your kids can, but that they should have valuable and important relationships both within the church and faith community and outside. But I think if you only have them outside, you lack an essential element to have a strong and independent voice of faith. It is the friends who share your faith that rally around you, that may not even go to school with you, that help you have the strength to go and stand and have an independent voice for what God is doing in your life in any setting. Some of my kids' closest friends are outside of the church. And by the way, it's not like, oh, they're ministering to them. No, that's not what I mean. Does that happen? Sure. And they also minister to my children. They're great kids. Respectful, honest, a lot of these things. I'm just saying that we need to have friends in both places. We need to build up a deep reservoir of encouragement in both of those places, because if we don't, we lack something that's very important, which brings me to the very last point when it talks about helping our kids. And this is something that my wife has championed in our home, and that is simply to pray for friends. I mean specifically pray for our children to have a friend. I'm being dead level specific. God, would you bring into Brooke's life a great friend? I can remember when my wife decided, I need to start praying that for Brooke. She was in second grade, end of the second grade year. And some of Brooke's friends and her families in here, and they've got this, that prayer's been multiplied. They have this great group of kids and friends that we're just blessed with. But we've done that for everyone, and my wife has championed it. Some of Brittany's closest friends can be traced back to the 4th grade Sunday school class here at Cape Cod Church. And they're all off at college. We're saying, I'm praying, God, would you place in their life? You think my kid's off at college, you think I'm done? Our oldest is off at what would generously be said to be not a very godly, spiritual institution. You don't think we're praying, God, please bring some godly people? Just give her some friends. I remember she texted us one night. She had gone to a campus Christian event, and she texted me. She said, Dad, I met normal people. That is only an 18-year-old can. I'm going to tell you what, I slept so good that night. I want my, and if need be, if it's absolutely unavoidable and she has to get married, I'm praying, God, would you just bless her with a godly man? Would you? When are we done praying? I got an 8-year-old boy. God, would you bless him with great friends? I thought that'd be a great way for us to finish. God, would you bless our kids? Would you bless my friends? Would you bow with me? With our heads bowed and our eyes closed. Maybe you're here and you're a parent and you've got a brand new child. Start praying. God, give them some great friends. Maybe your children at their formative years. Maybe you've got a child that just, their heart's broken because they're lonely. I'm just inviting you to pray for them. Just pray, God, would you just bring, maybe even this morning, sitting up in a Sunday school class, maybe Thursday night off in a corner at Detour. If not this week, next week, Father, I just pray that you would bless the son or daughter who's off at college. Father, would you bring them some godly friends? Father, we love our children. We want, as moms and dads, to be everything to them. But here's the truth. We can't. They need friends, peers, mentors. So we're just asking right now, Father, that you would bless them with that. For that little girl, little boy that, Father, just doesn't have anyone. Would you just bring someone into their life that they would together, Father, encourage and lift one another up? Father, would you give moms and dads the courage to use their authority and later on their influence to take strong stands, to bless our children, to move them away from wrong places and into right places. Father, would you let your church, our children's ministry, would you let it, Father, be just a fertile place for children to build lifelong relationships. Father, would you let our youth ministry be a place of level and common ground? Father, where the awkward ninth grader meets the captain of the soccer team, and Father, somehow, right, you bond them together Father, would you let the ground become, and would you bless our children and use your church to do it? And Father, we thank you. We thank you for the good and godly friends you've brought into our children's lives. They are answers to prayer. So thank you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.